rights of way on the public roads and the existing county roads to extend those trunk lines so that we could serve those areas should they want to tie on in the future.
Which is the same thing that we're doing with the condo association on Colorado. The city is providing the main. The residents are responsible for providing the internal service line and connecting each condo or home up to that service line and ultimately the main. It's the same exact thing we're doing now on Colorado Drive.
And I might add that that is something that is an option for any association or area. It's called voluntary annexation, and that's exactly what that homeowners association did. They came to the city, correct?
Right.
And wanted.
And again, it's a good example because here again, the city does not maintain or will not maintain those private streets, and we will not maintain the interior sewer lines. We will maintain the trunk line or the main, but we will not maintain the internal workings. But we will provide garbage, we will provide recycling, they will get police and fire service, they will get all of the other services that every other resident in the city of Muscatine gets, that you and I get. It's just those two items and snow removal as part of street maintenance that they will not be receiving.
I think if a decision is made by city council that if they want to proceed, in what capacity do you wish to proceed? Are there specific areas that you looked at prioritize first versus other ones? Do you want to do it all? Do you just not want to do it at all? Period. That's what we're after, and I think when we have that, it becomes more reasonable for us to use staff time to come up with some numbers about how we're going to come up with those costs. Right now, we're coming up with department head level estimates for what we would, and that's what we're using for the purposes of tonight's discussion. But I don't think we want to go out and invest a whole lot of time on very specific costs unless we know there's a strong sense that we're headed in that direction, just because it doesn't make much sense to do that at this point during the discussion phase. It's not that we can't come up with them. We need to know what, if anything, council wishes us to do in the future, and then we can take that information and we can begin to put those costs together for you.
As a follow-up on that, if I may, I mean, it's important for us to know if there's a strong interest in having the city take over those streets and the city take over those internal sewer mains. If there's a strong interest in us doing that, we need to know that, because these current estimates do not include that. And we'll need to show you some additional cost estimates that Andrew can do or has done that will show you that the length of that payback, which you'll see is significantly higher.
Just for the record, there is no state or federal funds will come in play here for such a project.
To assist in
yes.
I wouldn't say there isn't, because there is some. I would guess that most of the state funding applications are there to fulfill a specific need, and generally those are to the benefit of what they call low, moderate income families. So there would be some steps. There are some opportunities. The Iowa Revolving Loan Fund is one that's a low interest loan. There are those types of programs that we could take a look at. Once again, I think that will be determined better when we have a feel for what, if anything, we're going to undertake and at what level. And then we can pursue, more demographic information, specifics about the makeup of those neighborhoods, what the condition of the streets are, what their needs for sanitary or storm sewer might be. Those kinds of issues become easier to pull into play.
But there's nothing specifically tailored towards annexation. These are just the same tools that we currently use, whether it's the state revolving fund, the SRF, like we're using down at the Water Pollution Control Plant, CDBG block grants that we tried to get for working with Mr. Harder. I mean, they're the same tools that we use today, nothing specifically for annexation.
Other questions or comments?
Mayor, I had another one
Yes.
for Steve. As Osama had asked about bonding capacity, basically, and would some kind of a sense of our bonding capacity logically proceed even council's direction on, you know, whether we want to pursue anything? I mean, again, we wouldn't want to spend too much money if it's, or we want to offer an opinion if it's financially not viable.
Actually, if you remember, Nancy was here a few months back. We contracted with PFM out of Des Moines. They're working on that. It's technically in conjunction with our CSO program, but we are looking at bonding capacity. Bonding capacity would not be an issue. You know, we're bringing in additional capacity with this as well, and it's really the payback I think you need to focus on for those capital projects. We would obviously bond for those because the money would not be coming in immediately. It'd be over a period of time. I mean, that's something else we'd have to talk about. I mean, our taxes 100% on day one. Do you do that over a period of years? There's lots of options that we have in putting together a plan that goes before the City Development Board. And if we do anything other than this, assumes that taxes are received on day one. And now, if you did it over a period of 5 years and did it, 20% a year until the 5th year, that would all factor in to this scenario, and we increase the payback, obviously, over that same time frame.
Now, other questions or comments? Anybody? Jerry?
Go ahead.
Looking at Area A, which encompasses the whole area being considered, correct? Then you separate out on the following pages different portions of that area. If you look at Area Q, for instance, on page 28, if you go in that direction, it would take 6.5 years to accomplish the same thing that's accomplished in A as a part of that total project in 2.4 years.
Yeah.
So I don't understand why you would want to piecemeal this approach. And also, if I were a homeowner in one of these subdivisions, and I was told, we're going to annex you, but the neighboring subdivision we're not going to, what sort of a feel there would be towards, or on the part of the people that weren't going to be, compared to those who had to be.
I don't know, Andrew, if you want to address it, but Andrew took a look at the entire area and then broke it out into, I don't know, not really census tracts, but
the logic behind the way they broke it out is it's basically segments of the major roads that serve the area you need. There's, if you want to break it out, there's maybe 8 or 9 of those, and then if you combine them in different ways, you get about 30 different areas. And that was done to see if there's cost savings on certain areas. For example, some of them are served by Highway 38, which is a state-maintained highway, to see, if you look at it that way, if it's not as expensive, et cetera, like that, just to cover all our bases.
None of these areas would be the cost of capital improvements being 2.4 years in Area A, none of them would be less than that, as I look back. Is that correct? Basically,
That depends on what scenario you look at. If you look on starting on page 8, there's 4 tables. On a couple of them, areas M and Z have a quicker payback time than A, but A is one of the quicker ones, yes.
okay. And, well, I would just comment that I think Andrew has really done a fine job of pulling this information together. It would be quite a task, very time consuming, I'm sure. There's nothing. So, I appreciate your efforts.
Okay, Diane.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Hearing what my fellow council members have said, I'd like to see, number one, all in it. Take, for example, Area A. You don't have to do all 30 of them. And put together one example that is all inclusive with all the information we need for expenses, salaries, ongoing, that would be over a period of 2.4 years, the longest, capital. So that all the expenses are there. Also do that same area and put in the sewers and the roads.
Area A already includes your first question. The only thing it doesn't include is the sewer and the roads.
But I thought it didn't include the question of all the finances that we're questioning, they're really not all inclusive in here.
It only includes the prorated costs, not the total.
It doesn't include the total cost of the fire station.
But the fire station would not necessarily only benefit, as he pointed out on page 3, the fire station out there would not only benefit the annexed area, it would also benefit some of the citizens,
But all of the other
citizens of Muscatine.
Correct. But I'd still like to see the cost.
No, and we can
the
do
one
that.
item that was...
That was the only item that was prorated. Was
But the one item that I would, and I don't think it's going to make a drastic change, but you did use entry-level position costs for police and fire. And maybe we need to use
An average.
somebody at step 5, which is met at 2.5 years.
That'd be a simple fix to make.
Right.
Right.
So I think
That'd
changes like that, I think I don't think the numbers are necessarily inaccurate. They just don't necessarily include exactly what we as council would like to see them be.
I like the presentation, the way you have put the information together to help, as Jerry said, that also to help us understand and going by the areas. This is education, and that's what we're doing, and that's what I'd like everyone to know, that we're here tonight educating ourselves as well as educating you so that we can make a good decision at some point. So thank you, Andrew.
Mayor?
Yes.
One more question for Steve and Greg. Another one of the city development prerequisites to annexation, or at least involuntary, is the infill, the city infill. We have to demonstrate that we've adequately developed the areas within the city. Am I remembering that correctly?
Well, we have to put a good case forward. We cannot simply annex because of revenue. I mean, that's not going to cut it. That can't be the reason for annexation. There has to be, the city has to put together an adequate case before the City Development Board of several reasons why we think we need to annex. Costs or revenue is a factor, but it's not the only factor that can be considered. So there are several things, and one of the things could be that we also have an infill program within the city, and we're looking at different areas, which we are looking at different areas where we can adequately infill within the city now and utilize utilities, for example, in streets, utilize the infrastructure, the one that's already in place, that's closer to the central area, that's cheaper to provide. I mean, those are all things that we're doing. It would be part of our case that we put forward.
Anybody else? No one? Yes, Greg.
As you go to questions for the public, perhaps we could, rather than deal with, I'm not in favor of annexation comments, if there's specific questions first that we could deal with as relates to the information that Andrew's presented, if there's questions related to that, if we could get those done first, that would, I think, be helpful.
Thank you. That's exactly what I was going to do.
Thank you very much.
It's kind of interesting sitting here and looking out over the audience, and then I want to start this little dissertation by saying that this is not a funny matter to this city council. This is very, very serious. There's going to be a lot of meetings that are going to take place before anything concerning annexation or this type of a program becomes a part of the city, or whether it's not going to be a part of the city. But I told you that if there's one or two of you that would like to come up with a question or two that you would like to have answered, I know there are probably 500 questions, but if there are a couple of questions that you want us to bring back specifically whenever we meet again to discuss this subject, if somebody would like to come to the lectern right now and tell us yes. And again, I'm not interested in 3 pages of dissertation. Tell us what you want or don't want.
Sure, I'm Mike Gauss.
I need your name and address.
Yes, sir. Mike Gauss. I live at 2588 Canterbury in Dartford. And thank you for the opportunity to share with you. Thank you for the presentation. I will say I disagree almost wholeheartedly with what is presented. I feel that it's misleading and incomplete, and really every aspect where there could have either been a worst case or a best case scenario for these costs, the best case scenario has been taken. I think that I would hope that the City Council would want to see the actual costs and potential worst case scenario costs. A couple examples of that, the fire station is estimated at $1.5 million. I would challenge that number. I would ask for the city to go out and actually get some numbers to see what it really is, which needs site planning and things associated with that. Also, the prorating of that. It was already stated tonight that there is no plans for